Oh, first of our students arriving.
Lovely. See you later.
Second of our students arriving. That's us for the day.
It's funny, Hamish walks out with a muffin and he goes, "Oh, I really love banana and sultana. They're my favourite." And I went, "No, they're orange and date today."
Those are my favourite.
Hey, sorry?
Orange and date. My auntie has the most amazing recipe.
Yeah, I've been making muffins every morning for the EOC team for how many weeks? Yeah, and Hamish...
How do you find the time?
I do it at 6 o'clock. Hamish particularly gets into them. Hamish and Amanda.
Going to be a good challenge this morning, keeping up with the paperwork.
Yes. So who else we've got? Only 6 at the moment. Oh, are you having to do it?
I don't know, but Ra isn't on the line yet. So,
Oh, okay, we got caught last time, didn't we?
so being a Boy Scout.
Good on, yeah, good on you. You're going to find your cows.
Well, I put my cows up, and we only part of me appeared. You see?
Oh, really? Why is that?
No, just the virtual background is not finding anything.
Oh. That's bizarre. Morning, Shane and Alison.
Morning, morning, everyone.
Oh, it picks up both of us. But what if you do it through your computer?
Then I do that in my office.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Because it's weird. Because it worked last time, didn't it?
Yeah, it's just being difficult. That's fine.
Got my volume up. It is now on 100%.
Yeah.
Morning, Grant. Morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
Not too loud.
Yeah.
Embarrassing.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yay.
Morena, Ra.
Morena.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Morning, Heather. Morning, Michael.
Morning.
Morning, everybody.
Morning. Enjoying that banana and sultana muffin, Hamish?
I certainly am. As you know, it's one of my favourites, Your Worship.
Even though today's the origin date.
Some of us can only dream of these types of food, folks.
Well, it's right here, Councillor Casey. So,
Yeah, home cooking certainly gone out my window.
Literally?
Yeah.
Certainly smells nice, Hamish.
yeah, it is indeed.
Rat bag.
That scratch and sniff video.
Must be the ones you baked this morning, Councillor Ford.
Morning, all.
Morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
Stuart and Grant are the only ones, and Grant was there. So Grant and Stuart are out. So Grant was there. Good morning, everyone. Just so you're aware, we are currently streaming to YouTube. We've got everyone on except Grant, who was on earlier, so I'm not quite sure what's happened, but given it's 8:30, I think we should start the meeting. So,
Thank you, and welcome to the council meeting for the 7th of May via Zoom. And it's great that everybody's been able to connect to us this morning, so which is great. And also to our viewers who are live streaming with us, welcome this morning. So I'll declare our meeting open and ask Rarity, our Māori advisor, to open our meeting with a karakia.
Morena whānau. Me noi tātou. I te atua kaharawa tau mai te Māori, tau mai tō ma, tō mana ki kirungi a tātou. Tēnā ngaria mai tō wairua kirungi a tātou I mahi ana I tēnei momo mahi kia pai ai te ara whakamua te kite. Tēnā whakapainga o mātou whare, o mātou tau mai ngā mana ki kirungi I tō mātou whānau ki wiwi ki wawa. Kia oro ai rātou I tēnei wā, I ngā tau maha kirungi a rātou. Kia tūturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna, tīna. Haumie, huie, tāiki.
Thank you. So we'll go straight into our agenda. Apologies. Now we have...
Grant's just joined us. So
we have a full team of councillors here. Welcome back, Grant. So no apologies this morning, and welcome to the rest of our team from the management team and council. Item 3 is our request for leave of absence. There are none. So we can go straight on to item 4, which is the confirmation of the minutes, which you'll find in the order paper on page 6. And I'd like a mover and a seconder, please, for that resolution. Councillor
Worship,
Ford.
Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held 23 April 2020 be adopted as a true and correct record.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Marsh. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? That motion is carried. Thank you. We come to item 5, and this is declarations of interest, where elected members need to declare any conflicts, potential conflicts that they may have with any of the items on the agenda for today's meeting. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Great. Thank you very much. So moving into our agenda, item 6, there are no requests for our public forum today, and likewise there are no presentations for today's meeting. We have no notification of late items. Likewise, we have no recommendations from our committees, and there are no minutes from other committees for our information. So we move straight to item 11, which is our officers' report. You'll find that on page 18. And this is the strategic framework for our 10-year plan, the adoption report. And you'll recall we've had a number of workshops and email sessions about what our vision and our priorities should look like. And we've had some really good, robust discussion. And I'm going to hand that over to Rebecca just to take us through this report before we take the recommendation.
Thanks, Mayor Helen. You'll see that the report goes through the process that we took to get to today. Several workshops and, as Mayor Helen says, a lot of robust discussion. What is being proposed is a very simple framework that outlines Council's strategic priorities and vision. What's really good about this framework, I think, is it aligns very directly with the 4 well-beings, the social, cultural, environmental and economic well-beings as set out in the purpose of local government. So we are very clearly going to be working towards the promotion of those well-beings as we are required to do by the legislation. So legislation aside, they are really meaningful priorities that you guys are proposing and considering for adoption today. So I would just open the floor for any questions.
Thanks, Rebecca. Are there any questions from the team before we go to the recommendation? No? Excellent. So yeah, I just commend our team and Rebecca and her team for the work that we've done on this. I think it is very exciting in these strange times and whatever the new normal may look like. And I think it's, I'm very proud to say that we can come out with our new vision, with our new priorities, and really give us the motivation to go forward. So there is a recommendation on page 18, and I'd be very happy to move that the council adopts the following as its strategic framework for the draft 10-year plan 2021 to 31. Vision Manawatu District, proudly provincial, a great place to land. Our priorities, a place to belong and grow, a future plan together, an environment to be proud of, infrastructure fit for the future, a prosperous, resilient economy, and our projects and services as outlined in the recommendation. So do I have a seconder for that recommendation? Thank you.
Michael.
Councillor Ford, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Against? That motion is carried.
Your Worship, I did have my hand raised for a question.
My apologies, Councillor Humphrey.
Sorry, thank you. Look, I'm very supportive of the vision and the priorities that we've agreed on. I did just have one question to raise with you as colleagues. I know, as I was reflecting on them, after the workshops, I noted that in our existing outcomes, we have an outcome focused probably more internally on the organisation. It currently talks about being a customer focused and efficient organisation. And I had just wondered whether there would be value in adding another priority, something along the lines of value for money and excellence in local government. I think in terms of demonstrating a calibre of quality and affordability for the community. I had just wanted to raise that as a possibility for additional inclusion. If everyone's comfortable with the priorities as they stand, that's absolutely fine. It was just an afterthought that I'd had.
Thank you. Open that up for comment. Is there support to add what Councillor Humphrey is suggesting to our priorities, or are we happy to leave them as the recommendation and motion stands? Councillor Casey.
Just a question to my colleague and possibly the rest of the council. Is it actually a priority or is it an outcome? So I just want to pop that in there, as an outcome of, for example, a prosperous, resilient economy, the way we actually look at our operations as a council as well. Are we being agile? Are we being efficient enough? So I just wanted to put that element in there for consideration or dismissal.
Thank you. Any further comment, question in regard to that?
Yeah, I've got one.
Campbell?
Yeah, I'd support that comment in the previous vision statement in the LTP. There was the statement there that Manawatu District Council is a customer focused and efficient organisation, and I just think we shouldn't lose sight of that. It was quite useful, I think, being in the earlier vision statement, and we're not putting any reference to that sort of thing in the current statement. So I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you. So is that something, Councillor Humphrey, you would wish to test with a motion and with the wording so we can capture that?
Look, I'm happy to. I had been going to suggest it as an amendment, but I think Councillor Campbell's bang on the money. In terms of affordability and demonstrating value for money and quality and excellence in our service delivery, I believe that should remain as a focus. I totally agree with Councillor Casey that it is woven into the other outcomes as well, but I think it does deserve standalone. So I'd be happy to. I'm not sure of from a protocol perspective quite the best way, but to propose adding to the priorities value for money and excellence in local government.
Thank you. And I have a seconder, Councillor Casey. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? That motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Humphrey, for raising that. We move to item 11.2, the Duke Street Courts at the Feilding High School. This is seeking approval from Council to reallocate some current funding that we had in this current financial year for the Duke Street Courts fencing replacement, to reallocate it to the Duke Street Courts resealing project that was completed by the high school back in February 2019. And as you see in the report, Council has made some funding allocations in future years towards supporting the work at the ongoing maintenance, etc., up at the school. So is Matt with us today?
Yes, he is.
Great, Matt, I'll hand it over to you. Is there anything in this report that you want to highlight before we open it for questions?
Thank you, Worship. Good morning, councillors. Probably detailed in the report is some options for you guys to consider. As detailed, we currently have a licence to occupy, and that is through to 2024. So that licence to occupy was signed in 2015. So there's some detail behind the report in your appendices, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So open that up for questions or comments from Councillor Marsh.
Yes, good morning. Thank you through the chair. Question is at 2.4 in our audit document, Just the 2022-23, the 288,000 that we'd allocated there for helping with the resealing of the courts. Just what then happens to that budget, and just where to from here as far as that right to occupy is concerned, if that only goes through to 2024.
Correct. So that 288,000 is currently in the LTP in year 5. One of the recommendations is for us to obviously consider the recent decision on the South Street courts. So there are various options around that. So essentially at the moment, we would be making a decision potentially through the next long-term plan on what that funding looks like.
Right. Yeah, it was just worrying to me from that point of view, and the fact that here is the high school that spent 700 and I just haven't got that in front of me, 700 odd thousand on the resurfacing. Will they come back and ask us for that 288?
The resurfacing for the courts, the total amount I believe was around 70 to 80,000. That was for the courts. The request that they're making is actually to contribute that funding towards the artificial turf, which is separate.
Right.
Thank you. My interpretation of that is that now that we're going into the next 10-year plan, there is an opportunity to revisit any future allocations of funding.
Question from
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, hopefully you can all hear me. I had a bit of audio problem first thing. Look, my question was actually very similar to Councillor Marsh, but I did wonder whether or not we think this actually represents value, given that we've got limited right to occupy, I think, from May to September, and the amount of money that's being invested in that seems to me to be quite substantial.
Councillor Short.
I just wanted to comment to Councillor Hadfield that the Saturday morning netball primary school league, I think, has 300 to 400 children every Saturday during the winter months, and they moved to those courts from the council ones down South Street because there's more courts at the high school. I think if you go there on any Saturday morning in the winter months, you'll see that it's a very well used facility.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments to Matt? No, thank you. So we go back to the recommendation, which is about the reallocation of the funding.
Oh, there's a question from Councillor Ford.
Councillor Ford.
Thank you. I just want to ask the question, is there any merit in linking this funding, if we approve it, to an extension of the licence to occupy?
I guess question for Matt, is that able to be done like that, or does it need negotiation for the extension of the school?
Looking at the licence to occupy, there are current clauses within the agreement which state that we do have to obviously contribute to the maintenance of the courts. So that agreement goes through to 2024. So we would probably need to revisit the agreement and look at an extension to the current lease.
Thank you. So any further questions? Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, sorry to come back through the chair. Just in regard to this funding, we've now shifted that funding, which was supposed to be for the tennis courts, to the largest sum of that now going to the artificial turf. And do we have any rights to that artificial turf? Is that part of the funding as well?
So all the funding that's detailed in the report, none of it is allocated to the artificial turf. So all the funding that's outlined in the long-term plan is towards the maintenance of the courts, the fencing, and in year 5, the resurfacing of the court. So there's no funding allocated to the artificial turf.
Thank you. So we are talking about the Duke Street courts. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Ford.
That certainly, as I understand it, but the high school is asking us to consider funding for the hockey turf or the artificial turf courts. Is that right?
That's correct. And if you can recall, last year there was a request from the high school for council to make a contribution towards the artificial turf. Council declined at that stage to fund the turf. And I believe that was based on that the high school was unable to demonstrate sort of community need outside of school usage. So I think that was the concern at the time.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, look, I was just going to pick up on the recommendation, noting that today we are only being asked to reallocate $52,000 towards the resealing of the courts. There is a whole lot of other commitments, longer-term commitments in the long-term plan, but I support the comments and the advice in the report that actually it would be timely for us to review and reconsider, and allocate those as we move into the next 10-year plan cycle, particularly given our decision to retain the community tennis courts on South Street and weigh up, where the best investment is going forward. But I'm quite comfortable, with the contribution of cost as outlined in the recommendation for the resealing of the courts.
Thank you. Councillor Quarry.
Thank you, Your Worship. The condition of the fence, I see the money's being brought forward to maintain and upgrade the fence. Just what condition is the fence in, and could it last another 2 or 3 years or even longer?
The fence is actually in average condition. There are a few patches that can be repaired. The funding that's there, which is court maintenance, is not only there just for the courts themselves, but actually the fencing as well. So the fencing is in reasonable condition.
Yeah, that raises the question: are we spending money for the case of spending money? And if the fence can last, another 5 years, why are we replacing it?
Councillor, we're not actually replacing the fencing. The request is for us to combine the court maintenance budget line and the court fencing line to cover the cost of the courts being resurfaced in March 2019.
Thank you. Does that help clarify that?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
If there are no further questions, I'm happy to move that the council approves the reallocation of $52,000 for the Duke Street court fencing replacement in the 2019-20 financial year to contribute to the cost of resealing of the courts completed by Fielding High School in February 2019.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Short. Thank you. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. So we move to 11.3 on page 57. And the purpose of this item is for us to receive the written and oral submissions received in relation to the council bylaws and policies, and specifically the freedom camping bylaw, the public places bylaw, stock movement and grazing bylaw, the revocation of part 5 of the traffic safety and road use bylaw, and the stock underpass policy. So we received 27 submissions, and we have 13 requests to speak to their submissions. Before we do that, there is a recommendation for us to receive and hear these submitters on page 58. So do I have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Ford.
Your Worship, I move that the council receives the report on the hearing of written and oral submissions on the bylaws and policy review 2020 and hears from 13 submitters who indicated that they wish to be heard.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Marsh. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Against? That motion is carried. Thank you. So before we get into hearing from our submitters, I just talk about the rules around this. Each of our speakers has 10 minutes to speak to us in regards to their written submission we have received, and then allowing 5 minutes for questions. It is questions only. We're not making any decisions today. So it's purely the opportunity for elected members to ask any questions. As we are doing this by Zoom, please bear with us with the technology. So we'll move straight into the first one, and Ali is helping us with the technology today. Do we have our first speaker, which is Milton Pedley?
Yes, we do.
Right, welcome. Welcome, Milton. Are you able to hear us? Not sure that we're sure we have Milton with us, but whether
Milton's just here, he's not muted. It's possible he's gone away to grab something and will come back at 9.
we are conscious that Milton was down for 9 a.m. this morning, and we are slightly ahead of time with our hearings. He is logged into us. Milton, are you there and are you able to hear us? We'll just give him a moment to see if he can join us. Just while we're waiting for Milton, just confirming that we do have another speaker this morning at 11:15, which is PowerCo, in response to their written submission. So, Milton, are you there and are you able to hear us?
Your Worship, is it worth explaining how to unmute? Milton may not know how to unmute.
Milton is, according to our system, not muted. So he appears to be unmuted.
We'll just send him a message, but it may well be that he's waiting till 9 o'clock. There he is. No.
I'm here. If you can hear me.
We can hear you, Mr. Oswald. We're just waiting for our first speaker to join us. So if you just bear with us, stay with us, and we'll come back to you.
I was just to suggest that if he's not available, I'm happy to go.
Thank you. We'll give Mr. Pedley another go and see if he's with us. Otherwise, we will move on.
Right. Suggestion is we can have a call on the cell phone. So 6.
Yep.
357.
Yep.
8721.
Do you want to try Milton's mobile?
Yeah, we're just giving him a call.
Good morning, Jean speaking.
Good morning, Jean. It's Helen Warboys speaking from the Manawatu District Council. We were expecting to be talking to Milton at 9 o'clock this morning with his submission. We can see that he is logged on to us, but I'm not sure that he can hear us.
Oh, well, Helen, I'll just I'll run over to the shed and what shall I do? Tell him that, can he hear you?
Yes, if he's, according to our technology, he is logged into us to speak to us, but if he can't hear us, you could take the phone and we could talk to him on the phone.
Oh, okay. Well, look, I'll run. I've got a phone in my hand. I'll run over to the shed now, Helen, and catch up with him. But I know he was expecting, because I've made him get up early and get organised.
Okay, well, don't rush. We've got another speaker we can move on with, so don't rush. I will give you a call back on this number and see if he can't speak to us via Zoom, he can talk to us via the phone.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much for your trouble. I'll just tell him to be on guard.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, so while we wait for Mr. Pedley. He's having another go at connecting to us.
So I think we'll hear from Bob.
Right.
That's probably a good option.
Okay, apologies for that. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. We'll move on to your submission, which for our team is on page 9. Thank you for taking the time to make a submission, and the time is yours. You're welcome to present your submission to us and then leave time for questions at the end.
Thank you. Hope everybody's staying well in these difficult times.
We are.
Our submission's pretty much just to tidy up on wording and definitions. I have been asked by our committee to pass on our praises and congratulations for being so forthcoming and open to freedom camping. We have noted there's a very definite lack of defining of what a freedom camping actually is as provided by the Act. And we're pleased to acknowledge that you guys recognise tents and other forms of camping other than RVs as well. I'm not sure there's much more I can say. I'm open to questions. Some of you have probably realised that we ourselves have actually developed the Responsible Campers Accreditation Program. That has been done in conjunction with a lot of councils and a lot of feedback from the different councils. That is an education type program, which follows on with a quiz that people basically can pay $20 for 2 years and become an accredited camper. The quiz ensures that they know the principles and expectations of freedom camping. It's inclusive. It's not just for RVs. Any freedom camper, as defined by the Act, can be an accredited camper, as can any other traveller that travels around our country's roads. So even the likes of truckies, it's inclusive, everybody. And self-containment to us, we believe every camper can and should be self-contained. And that self-containment is simply the ability to retain one's own waste until such time as it can be disposed of in facilities that are fit for purpose. That means no block dump stations, no overflowing rubbish pits. So other than that, I'm open to take any questions anybody's got.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your submission and for your comments. I'll open it up to the team. Are there any questions of Mr. Osborne, please? No? Thank you. Yours, Councillor Quarry.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Could you put a time on that period that you should be self-contained for? 1, 2, 3, 4 days?
It's totally dependent on the requirements of the camper. We educate based on the basics of self-containment. It remains up to the actual camper to determine what they need. So you actually have a position under our program where if a camper's going to a local beach for a night to the local ratepayers, if there's actually toilets there, they may not have to have a toilet of their own because there's public toilets available. By the same token, a lot of people only camp for one night on a weekend, We often go, like, we ourselves often go down the beach on a Friday night or a Saturday night just for one night. So in that way, we're inclusive again, you know. Yeah. We have as part of our program, excuse me a minute, I can reach around the corner. Oh, we had a little issue came up last year when we were working with Kaikoura's working group, and they were quite disturbed that they had no way of actually knowing if campers actually had a toilet. Our solution was to design and provide these cards. I hope you can all see them.
You can, thank you.
Which can be displayed. They're plastic cards, so they can be secured to a tent. We don't specifically talk about these cards publicly. If someone does our accreditation program, they simply ask if they have a toilet they use while camping. If they answer yes, then they get one of these cards to get for the accreditation program pack. If they don't get one. And it's that simple. These are not publicly promoted.
Thank you. Councillor Humphrey, you had a question.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Osborne, for both the time with the submission and your time joining us today. Look, my question was just, you made a comment in your submission that talked about a concern that you've discovered that certified self-containment is non-compliance with the Bill of Rights Act, and I just wondered if you could elaborate and explain that a little bit more for us, please.
There's been, the fact is that certified self-containment is only available for a small minority of campers as defined under the Freedom Camping Act. That being RV, you cannot certify a tent, which is why our program without the certification is inclusive of everybody. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment with the Ombudsman and other people regarding the Bill of Rights as it refers to certified self-containment. I had actually hoped to have some officially by today, but the virus situation has held everything up quite a bit. To place limitations on a right, which most people consider freedom camping to be a right, and the Freedom Camping actually says that any requirements have to comply with the Bill of Rights. You have to be pretty much targeted onto specific issues. So the Freedom Camping Act goes, the self-containment, standard, like we were just discussing, is 3 days, where there's a lot of people only camp for one night, you know, on the weekends and stuff. So there's that. It goes further than is required to meet its goals. And it's also very contradictory. And some of the recent amendments that were done in 2017 on the self-containment, many people consider the amendments to be an agenda-driven amendment. They're not actually a solution-based. And by that, there's a rule that says that you must be able to use your toilet in your camper van at all times when required. A lot of people refer to it as a bed made up rule. The fact is, the standard only applies when you're actually camping. It does not apply when you're traveling between campsites or anywhere else. The standard allows that once you're actually camping, you may use a toilet tent or an awning for your portable toilet. Really good. That's the solution. Problem is that the amendment then goes on to say, but before you can actually use that toilet tent or a awning, you must first meet the rule that that toilet's usable inside the camping vehicle. That becomes an agenda. That's not a solution. That is an agenda. And that is the forefront thing. So the whole self-containment stuff is up in the air at the moment. We know the largest RV and the common promoter of the self-containment standard is actually removed as an objective to enhance and promote that standard from its bylaws and constitution last year. I understand, I've just been in the last 6 weeks, I don't use apps, but I have been told Campermate has actually removed certification and references to the New Zealand standard from its grouping on Campermate. So now you search by self-containment, you do not search by certified self-containment. There's also been, and I have myself have noted, there's a lot of government websites now also removing references to certification as well. So what we believe, we believe that the writing's on the wall for certification, and we will still continue to drive for that to happen, and all of that camping's fairer for everybody. I mean, that's our goal. We want responsible camping to be available for everybody, so regardless of their mode, regardless of their club affiliations, because it's not all about RVs. And this is why we congratulate Manawatu for having recognised that and providing for tent camping, and are not pushing certification for self-containment, because that is only available for RVs. You guys have got a big river running through your area. I mean, I don't know how many. I haven't got. I've certainly heard a lot of stories from people that kayak and whitewater raft to Manawatu, particularly places through the gorge. Yeah, and often they all say, "Oh, we camp on the riverbank at night." You know, the thing is, under the Freedom Camping Act, pretty much anyone who camps within 100 metres of a motor vehicle accessible area is a freedom camper. And that motor vehicle can be as simply as an off-road motorbike, which practically can go anywhere. So your definition, this is why we say, you know, it looks like you guys have actually really sussed out that definition and you've run with it. Really good work. Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. We have another question from Councillor G. Taylor.
Yes, again, thank you for coming along this morning. Hey, I'm just a sort of a quick question. I'm just not 100% certain. Oh, jeepers, I've just lost it. With regard to freedom campers, including hunters who take their motorbikes and 4x4s to their campsites, river and lake users who camp on shore overnight, cycle tours, skiers, and many others are freedom campers. But I just was wondering what the difference is, because you've stated that sleeping under the stars isn't included. What's the difference there?
Well, the thing is that the Freedom Camping Act itself is actually defines a number of oh gosh, I haven't got it right, of modes of camping, which includes a tent, bivouacs, temporary structures, house trucks, RVs, caravans, all that. What's not included is sleeping under the stars, right? Or sleeping on a boat, which could be on a trailer. So they're actually not in their definition. So therefore, do we say they're excluded? I mean, I understand the intent of the Act, but I mean, this is, you know, we're getting down to bare basics now, and with the situation that's been allowed to develop particularly over the last 9 years with the Freedom Camping Act and the lobbying by strong RV groups, it's really tilted things in favour of RVs, and basically everybody else has been told to bugger off. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. I mean, I've just this week had a feedback from one council that basically says, well, nobody hunts on council land, so therefore we don't have to consider them. But the thing is, there's still the likes of cyclists and kayakers and other water users that, you know, do use council land for camping, for freedom camping. And for a lot of those people, it's not actually possible or practical for them to actually go to a specific site or to a holiday park. So you actually end up with a situation where they actually need to be self-contained. They can't be certified because they can't, you can't carry a camp toilet on a kayak, which is what you're required to be certified. But you can actually handle that waste in another manner and promote use of poo tubes and poo bags and stuff like that, which are actually quite a practical solution as well now. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's a good explanation. Thank you. So I'm conscious of time. Any final question there? Otherwise, thank you, Mr. Osborne. Thank you for your submission and for speaking this morning and answering our questions. That makes it very clear what your view is. And so we thank you for taking the time to do that.
Right.
And in due course, we will make some decisions around these. So thank you for your time.
We wish you well, and hopefully if you go down the path that you seem to be leading down, we'd like to hold Manawatu up as an example to the rest of the country.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe. Right, we're just going to make a call to Mr. Pedley. And his submission is on page 3.
The person at extension 961 is unavailable. Please leave your message after.
Okay. Maybe we'll try again. We'll try again.
Good morning, Jean speaking.
Good morning, Jean. It's Helen from the Manawatu District Council. Is Milton available?
Yes, Helen, I just take the to him. I'm sorry, I just missed your call. I thought he'd answered it, but I'll just run to the shed and get him to pick up the phone.
Thank you. Don't run. Take your time.
Oh, yes. Not so quite cold this morning, is it?
No, it's much better. Never mind. I think
Oh,
summer's
yes.
finished.
Oh, yes, I think so. Oh, we've been so lucky, though, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
We
Susan.
really have. And I'm just about drained to the shed.
Thank you.
Proudly provincial.
Here's Helen Warhorse on the phone.
Can you hear this telephone conversation okay?
Good morning, Helen.
Good morning, Mr. Pedley. Helen Warboys, Manawatu District Council. Thank you for...
I'm sorry, my computer has failed me.
Oh, that's all right.
I rang the office 3 times this morning and they said they can't get a message to the meeting. My apologies, Helen.
That's all right. We've got you in the meeting now via my phone, and all of our elected members and management can hear you through my phone. So we thank you for your submission that you have made, and you're now welcome to talk to us, to pull out the highlights from your submission, and then we will ask you any questions.
Well, Helen, have you got the letter that I wrote to you on the 29th of March?
Yes.
Setting out page 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 25, and 15 and 16. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make a submission to have your say.
Thank you. In front of us, we have your submission dated the 19th of March.
Yes.
And then you...
I have nothing to add to that.
Okay, you've nothing to add to that. So if you'd like to just stay with us, I will ask if any of our elected members have any questions they would like to ask of you in regards to your submission.
Thank you, Helen.
Opportunity to ask Mr. Pedley any questions. No, Councillor Short has a question for you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Milton. In regards to the comments around the class 1 and 2 soils I saw somewhere, I just wondered if you're aware of the district plan process that's going on at the moment and your opportunity to engage in that process and feed your views into it.
No, I'm not deviating from what I've written. That's how I feel about the system. No problems.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions from our team? No, it sounds like you've got it well covered in your submission. So we just want to thank you for taking the time to make your submission and put your points forward. So today
well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
That's all right. So today we're hearing from our submitters, and then we will come back to you.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you. Thanks. Goodbye and have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well done.
Okay, right. So that puts us a little bit ahead of time. Let's see if we have our next submitter, which is Jason from the Himatangi Beach Community Committee, and we're page 36.
So a message from Ellie, there are no other submitters up here yet.
Okay.
So we might like to have a 10-minute break.
Do our break now. Right, okay, so Ali advises us that we have no submitters connected to us as yet, so we're wondering if we might take our 10-minute break now and resume at 9:30, which was the time for our next speaker. So we will resume at 9:30. Thank you.
Suggest you mute your
Good morning.
Morning, Jason.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. We're just waiting till 9:30 and
Yeah, that's okay.
your time frames for those watching.
No problems.
Just a sound check, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Technology still going.
Right, thank you. It is 9:30, so we will recommence our meeting. And thank you. Our next submission is on page 36, and this is from Jason Kennelly from the Hamatangi Beach Community Committee. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning, all.
Thank you for joining us via Zoom. The technology is working, so that's great. We have your submission here in front of us, and you are welcome to speak to it. And then we'll open it up for any questions there might be.
Yeah, sure. So, community supports. Basically, we're saying that we have a local holiday park who supports the community. We need to probably try to get away from the freedom camping side of it, as in cars, scattered throughout the community. When we put it out to the local team here, there was no real positive not to support. So that's pretty much where we are. That makes sense. And so some of the points that they made was it stops freedom campers from putting extra pressure on our sewage, rubbish and recycling for the village. It stops large vehicles from monopolising our car parks, our local car parks, and using our public toilets. Stops freedom campers from dumping rubbish and human waste and down Hernia's Terrace, and we've actually seen that quite a number of times. There's also a safety aspect, so we've had to pull out a number of campers from the beach as well. So not understanding the high tides and the safety component of it. And it provides places for freedom campers with the district without having freedom camping inside communities of a Hamatangi Beach. Basically, is what we're saying.
Okay, thank you for that and for your comments. I'll open it up to the team. Is there any questions anyone would like further clarification from Jason, please? Councillor Casey.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, Jason. Thank you for your submission. Just along Hamatangi, the main street that leads past the motor camp and onto the beach, have there been examples where people have parked up on grass verges who are clearly not residents and just moved on? I see a few heads nodding from colleagues, but I don't live in Hamatangi, and I think it's just really worth explaining, particularly those who are online at the moment looking at us. Just a snapshot or a description of what the situation is, please.
Yeah, so that verge that you're talking about at different times, seasonality and stuff like that, sort of has a bigger impact. But even just straight adjacent to the camping ground, so they'll come in. We've got the facilities there, being in the campground, and they will just park their vehicles up willy-nilly along that area. and stay for a period of time. So yes to the answer. So that's what's happening there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Question to Jason, just for clarification, and it may be back just something that we need to follow through on, is has he had any feedback from Horizons? Because at the moment, the demarcation between Manawatu District Council and Horizon is basically the end of the Tarseo as you enter the beach. And just what the council, the Horizons Regional Council's bylaw states around the freedom camping along the beach.
Yeah, me myself personally. So I've just joined the Himotene community as chair. So I'm quite new to it. So, but talking to Ruben and the other ones previously, I haven't heard anything from that. Sorry, so I can't really give you
Okay, it may be something that we need to follow through at council level.
Thank you. That's a good point. Thank you. Any further questions of Jason? Councillor Short.
Yes, thank you, Jason, for your submission. I just wondered when you commented about sometimes people try and sleep down the beach. And I also thought, you know, you get a lot of surf casters and things that might spend many hours in one day at the beach, you know, I don't know, 12 hours or something. How much of a problem is it people trying to camp on the beach or possibly even in the sand dunes that you're aware of?
Haven't really seen too much actually in the sand dunes. It's where the community is more made aware, especially when we have to go and do a rescue of sort. So take a tractor or a four-wheel drive vehicle down and pull them out because of the tides come up. And we've seen that twice last year on bigger camper vehicles, and where we've had to you know, I've got a Hilux chute, but that was unable to sort of pull it out. Then we have to go to some heavier equipment to sort of get it out. And I mean, for the people that don't understand the level of tides that come up here, you know, they can be quite scary and taxing on the insurance side of it as well. Little cars and that's we haven't come across people of homeless or anything like that down there. We did see a vehicle that had a tarp over it probably about 6 weeks prior to lockdown, and that was parked there for about 3 days. When we did sort of approach, and that they sort of you know, huffed and puffed and sort of moved on. But it was more for the safety side of it, to be honest. Because they're sort of unaware, and this person that had the tarp over their vehicle, they had it was like a little Mirage type vehicle. It was a little saloon sort of thing. It was a two-wheel drive, just a standard wheel drive, front wheel drive, and where they had parked, and that was right up against the sand dunes. There was no way that they were getting out. So, you know, and then some people are reluctant to stop to have a chat as well. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Just carrying on from Councillor Casey's question. So there seems to be at the beach 2 issues. There's the one about people trying to camp on the beach. Do you also have the problem back in the village as well, particularly around the public toilets, I would assume?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you. I had a question there from Councillor Marsh.
Yes, I was just looking, the next letter after Jason's was also from the community committee and the community patrol. And I was just thinking that, so the only other 2 vehicles down there, one's for the community patrol and the other one's for the surf lifesaving group. They're both little Suzukis. So again, they can't pull out these bigger vehicles, obviously, that are down at the beach. So yeah, something that we need to consider.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, a lot of local, because a lot of us down here, you know, we're from farms and different sort of backgrounds, so we have the larger, and I think so the Himotene Transport have a big vehicle that's come down and get the pulled out the submerged vehicles in the sea, from time to time.
Great, thank you. Any further questions of Jason? Thank you. Thank you for raising, because there's obviously, like I said, a couple of issues there. There's what happens in the village, but then there's specifically around the beach. And as Councillor Marsh says, we need to check how that bylaw sits on the beach through Horizons. So if there's no further questions, thank you for your time, and thank you to the committee for putting those thoughts together. So appreciate that.
No problems. Thanks, team.
Thanks, Jason. Have a good day. Take care.
Yes.
James is.
Yep, I see our next submitter this morning is James from the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association. Welcome, James. Thank you for joining us today. And your submission from the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association is on page 40 for our team. James, you're welcome to speak to your submission. We have read the written submission. You're welcome to speak to it, and then we'll take the opportunity to ask you any questions.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak to you today remotely via Zoom. Very interesting time we live in at the moment, but I think we're all coping well. I actually just want to keep my verbal submission quite brief. We did provide that initial feedback, which has been included in the submission documents, and then after some conversations with council officers, we provided some supplementary submissions on the 6th of May, and that's really what I want to touch on, and it's just mainly around how the bylaw proposes to define what constitutes a self-contained vehicle, and that's really the issue that we want to try and discuss with council, and I'm happy to answer any questions so that there's some clarity from our end on what we're trying to propose. The way that the bylaw is currently written, a self-contained vehicle is one that's either self-contained, has facilities on board, or one that meets the requirements under New Zealand Standard 5465. We don't think it's appropriate, both from a policy and enforcement position, to define self-containment in that way, because you almost, at the end of the day, the requirement to be certified under the New Zealand standard is redundant, because all those vehicles will first meet that first test. We're suggesting to the council that if you have reason to want to restrict freedom camping in areas to vehicles that are self-contained or certified self-contained, that you just restrict it to those vehicles that are certified to the New Zealand standard, because that'll make it easier for you to enforce, and then you at least know that those vehicles have a minimum set of facilities on board that achieve what I think is to be the intent of that proposal. Now, that's not to suggest that vehicles that don't meet that test can't freedom camp, because I note that under your bylaw, you provide areas for vehicles that aren't certified or aren't self-contained, and you label them to freedom camp. I've had some really good discussions with Catherine Knight around some of the concerns that we've experienced or observed with other councils who have tried to go down the route of permitting self-contained vehicles to freedom camp, but without actually defining what that means under the standard. And it's really an enforcement issue that we've found that becomes quite complicated. In my supplementary submission, I'm not sure if you've had a read of that, I sort of outlined what documentation a certified vehicle needs to provide in order to verify that it is properly self-contained. And I think that your enforcement officers are across that, so we probably don't need to go into any detail on what is involved there. But the main point of our submission is, if the council's intention here is to limit freedom camping in certain areas to self-contained vehicles only, and your expectation is that they actually meet that New Zealand standard, you need to refine the way that you're defining what constitutes a self-contained vehicle.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll open that up for questions from the team. Anyone have a question there of James? No, obviously your submission and your verbal submission this morning has covered it very well, and it is very clear about how the Caravan Association interprets what we're trying to do and the recommendation that you're making to us.
No problem.
Last opportunity for any of our team. Further question? No? Okay. So thank you, James, for your time and for your team making the effort to come back to us. Quite substantial information there for us. So we'll take that on board, and in due course we will make decisions around our bylaws. So
no problem.
So enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So on our schedule now, we had a break from 10 to 10:15. So our next submitter is not due until 10:15. So what I'm suggesting is that we adjourn our meeting and we reconvene with our first speaker at 10:15. Thank you. Councillor Humphrey.
Sorry, I was just wondering whether you wanted to attend to the Lagoima requests and just squirrel that away.
I guess that's, yeah, that's a good idea because that helps us with our timeframes at the end of the meeting. So let's do that. Hopefully not too many of our team have left. So if we move then to 11.4, our Lagoima requests, they're on page 62 of your agenda. It is well set out what the requests were and also what the response was from council. I will hand that over to Richard, to Dr. Templer, to make any comments on our Lagoima requests.
So you can see on pages 64 and 65 are basically the list of requests we've received and we've responded to. So they range from confirmation of dogs owned by a tenant. This was a landlord in dispute with the tenant wishing to get some information. Two requests from Mark Wassley, which related to the discussion the council had around the Fielding Public Library and were information which was discussed in the meeting, which he asked for and was sent. Interestingly enough, two different people asking questions about vehicle tyres. We suspect this is in part in relation to the product stewardship legislation the government is considering. And then you had further questions around household plastics to landfill and industrial plastic waste to landfill. So that's a work in progress. A question from the Taxpayers Union doing the usual question of asking questions to which they already know the answer. For instance, they asked, were councillors going to reduce their salaries? And I pointed out that councillors don't set their salaries, it's set by the remuneration authority. Responsible Campers Association, Freedom Camping survey, which we completed. TVNZ, we're asking if there had been an increase in noise complaints during lockdown. You see a response to that. Someone asking for access to the ratings information database. Request from the Labour Leaders Office about district valuations. Taxpayers Union asked if I had a personal Twitter account. I don't, so that's a very short response. And then the Anti-Vivisection Society asking about rehoming of dogs, which we do via PAWS to ensure that the dogs go to good homes. So happy to take any questions about any of the Lagoima requests or responses.
Thank you. So there are the responses there from council back to our requesters. Any questions or comments in relation to that or further to what Richard has said? No? Okay, that is straightforward. So there is a recommendation on page 62 of our agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder? I see Councillor Marsh.
Yes, I so move that the report detailing the request for information received under the Local Government Official Information and Meeting Act 1987 for the months of March and April 2020 be received.
Thank you. I have a seconder, Councillor G. Taylor. Thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Against? That motion is carried. So thank you for that. And thank you for that, Councillor Humphrey. That helps with our meeting time frame for today. So given where we're at, we will now take that break and we will reconvene for 10:15, please.
Sound check.
Yes, we've got you loud and clear.
Yes, Ruben.
Morning, Ruben.
Morning, Your Worship.
How's things at the beach?
Good. Getting things done. Yep. Maintenance. Yep. It's all good.
Great. Oh, well, with a bit of luck next week, you might be able to have some customers.
Yeah, I've got a few essential workers, things like that. Not many though.
What's the time? 1:15. It is 1:15. Yep. Okay, right. We will reconvene our council meeting and back to our agenda, which is hearing submitters with our bylaws. And our next submitter is submission on page 45 in regards to Freedom Camping. Ruben from the Himatangi Beach Holiday Park. Welcome, Ruben. We have your written submission, so we're keen to hear from you, and then we will ask our team if there's any questions of you.
Cool. Okay, so I like the proposed bylaw as it's written. It seems fair to us. At the moment, Freedom Campers can camp directly outside our holiday park on the front verge, so right over the fence. And once one person does it, then more follow. From there, we get a lot of people wandering into camp, stealing showers and just using the facilities without asking. So the new proposed bylaw will space it further away from us, so we won't have that issue anymore. Also, it will encourage people to use the holiday park, and since we pay rent to the council, it'll add to the coffers of the council by them using our facilities. What else? We reduce use of the community facilities as they're not designed for overnight stays and whatnot. So that will get them out of our, take them away from doing that. And it still provides a place for people to freedom camp in the region. So that's good too. So people still have a place to go. And there's been times when freedom campers when they camp down the other end of Hunia Terrace, they defecate in the bushes and leave rubbish down there, which is left for community to clean up. And yeah, it's not ideal. Yep. And that's
okay.
that.
Thanks, Ruben. I'll open it up to the team. Are there any questions in relation to Ruben's submission? Councillor Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, Ruben, good to see you, and thanks very much for your submission. You're probably our busiest camping ground in the district. Mm-hmm. How often during the season are you full? And do you have any option for freedom campers when you are full?
We are only full for about 6 nights in the year, truly full. Filled to the gills. So yeah, there's the majority of the year I've always got space for people to use the facilities.
All right. All right, thank you. That's all I was after.
Cool.
Thank you. Any further questions? No?
Councillor Ford.
Councillor Ford, sorry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Hi, Ruben. Just in terms of the options for freedom campers interested in Himatangi, where's the closest option for them?
At the moment, or in the new bylaw?
Under the new proposal.
I'm not sure. I just know that I've seen that there was places prepared for people to freedom camp. But I didn't take much interest of where.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there a maybe one of our staff members could attempt to answer my question?
Thank you. Any of our team who are with us today able to answer where that proposed freedom camping might be permitted at Himatangi Beach?
Hello, it's Catherine here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
I will just bring up the bylaw, which luckily I have on my desktop here, and I will attempt to answer that, looking at the appendices at the back. So just if you can bear with me.
I think as a general rule for councillors, essentially we've said you can freedom camp within the Manawatu district, but we've specified where we don't want people to freedom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I'm just looking at schedule 1, and that's absolutely right. So all we can really do is say where it's prohibited, and I'm unfortunately not hugely familiar with Hamatangi area, but it appears to be that main road area and the grass verges, and also the road that the roads that are immediately adjacent to the beach. So I think they are probably the roads where the issues, and Ruben would be able to confirm this, probably the areas where the issues have been greatest in the past.
Yeah, so it's basically taken all the side road, the community itself of Hamatangi. Outside of the community, it's allowed. Could I add one more suggestion to the bylaw? That it's, I'm not sure how well it's written on being self-contained, like to the new standards that are coming up soon. We feel that all freedom campers should be fully self-contained, so they have their own facilities wherever they go.
Thank you. We've heard from some submitters that there seems to be some disagreement about the actual definition of self-contained and how that's interpreted.
Yeah, there's going to be, from what I hear through my channels from the Holiday Park Association, there's going to be a rewrite from MB on what is acceptable for self-contained standards, and they're looking at having a more thorough testing facility, but it's all just being worked out. So hopefully that will be sorted in the near future.
Great, thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at page 33 of the draft Freedom Camping Bylaw, which is this is off our council website, and that's highlighting every street in Hamatangi Beach as a freedom camping prohibited area. So that would mean that there's no freedom camping anywhere in the village.
That's right.
You happy with that?
Yep.
And yes, that is what we've heard from the community, that they don't want that freedom camping in the village nor on the beach.
Okay.
Any further questions of Ruben? No? Okay, thank you, Ruben. Thanks for taking the time to write your submission and join us today. We will come back to you once we've deliberated on these. And so thank you for your time, and take care and stay safe, and hopefully it's not too far away when you can fill up the holiday park again.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
So our next presenter is Bridget Thompson. I'm not seeing her in our list yet, but she has 7 minutes to.
Right, our next speaker is in regards to the stock movement bylaw, and we're on page 50.
She's just joined us now.
Yep, and she's just joining us now, so we'll give her a moment to link with us. Good morning, Bridget. Just unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Okay, hang on a minute.
That's all right, take your time. We're running ahead of time, so just give yourself a moment.
Okay. that working?
Yes, we can hear you fine. So thank you. Thank you for joining us today and for your submission in regards to stock movement bylaw. We have read your written submission. So the opportunity this morning is for you to speak to that and then allow opportunity for us to ask you any questions. So the floor is yours.
Excellent, thank you. I've prepared a little, it's just easier to read it out, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. So, good morning, Morena. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Much appreciated. I was going to come down to Manawatu to do it, but this is easier. As you will have seen from my written submission, the part of the draft stock movement and grazing bylaw, which I'd like to see changed, relates to section 26 entitled tethered stock, and the change I'd like to see is the replacement of the collective provisions of clause 26 with a simple prohibition on tethering in the district. My reasons for this primarily relate to animal welfare concerns. The Animal Welfare Act 1999 requires that all reasonable steps are taken to ensure that the physical health and behavioural needs of animals are met, and quite simply, tethering very rarely allows this. In a 2017 article in the Dairy News, retired vet Dr. Marjorie Orr put it well. She says, "Do you think the easiest way to keep your veg tidy might be to get a goat? Don't be fooled. It takes a lot of time and effort to look after tethered goat properly. Many of the people who tether goats genuinely think that goats are tough creatures that will eat anything, but in fact they're remarkably fussy eaters and they have a miserable life for many reasons. They usually have insufficient food and water, they are always lonely, and they're often cold and miserable, and they are very much at risk from vandals, dogs, and vehicles. The tethered goat is the subject of more complaints to the RNZ SPCA and to MPI than any other animal, and in too many cases, the complaints are justified. The practice of tethering goats has been contentious for quite some time in New Zealand, and over the past decade, there's been a number of statutory reviews relevant to this issue, and each time, the overwhelming majority of submissions during the public consultation phases have favoured an outright ban on tethering. A few years ago, a petition attracting a lot of support sought the same outcome, but on each occasion there was no meaningful change, even though the 2018 Goat Code of Welfare does acknowledge that tethering presents welfare challenges by stating that best practice means that goats should be kept in herds, or at least with one social companion, and that they shouldn't be tethered. MPI seems to believe that tethering is acceptable if certain conditions are met, and so the legal minimum standard relating specifically to tethering requires that certain conditions are met, including access at all times to food, water, and fully shaded and dry shelter that provides protection from extremes of heat and cold, and inspected at least once every 12 hours. But this country's animal welfare system continues to be under-resourced. As recently as late last year, an Otago University and New Zealand Law Foundation report found that, quote, "The level of response to complaints indicates that under-resourcing of the animal welfare enforcement system in New Zealand is a major constraint on realising the legal potential of the Act. Both MPI and RNZ SPCA are insufficiently resourced, and this results in overly selective enforcement, under-prosecution, insufficient proactive enforcement, and inadequate self-regulation," end quote. I don't imagine that your council has field inspectors who are under-occupied either. So compliance is at best voluntary and it's not incentivised. With respect, but permitting tethering only if certain additional conditions are met, as is currently proposed in the draft bylaw, including that the grassed area be not overgrazed or trampled into mud and that stock are only tethered during the hours of daylight, you are making the same error. Who will be enforcing these provisions? How will overgrazed and trampled into mud be objectively defined? It would surely be so much more cost efficient if complaints about tethered goats could be responded to simply by requiring and then ensuring that the tethering cease in accordance with your bylaw, rather than by trying to establish whether the proposed conditions had or hadn't been breached. There's an opportunity here for local government, and specifically your council, to lead by choosing the simple option of outlawing tethering in this bylaw. I worked for nearly 25 years in local government, and I learned the importance of the KISS principle, keeping it simple and effective regulatory practice. And I also know that council officers use other councils' documentation as the basis for their own all the time. If you ban tethering, I'm confident that other councils will do likewise in short order and achieve the sensible outcome that NAWAC and MPI seem to have been unable to. It's not as though anyone stands to be seriously disadvantaged by a ban on tethering. As far back as 2010, Dawn Pirani, who was then Federated Farmers Goat Section chairperson, said in relation to one of the reviews that she, quote, would have liked a harder line on tethered goats, and that she's not madly keen on goats being tethered, that 9 times out of 10 tethered goats are alone on the side of the road. You see only one goat there, and these goats are flock animals. The Farmlands Lifestyle Guide recommends that goats are not tethered, saying that there are some health and welfare issues associated with tethered goats, as they can often not express their normal social behaviour and can sometimes not be given the care they require. Dr. Orr concluded her Dairy News article as follows. So, if you need to keep your berm tidy, much better to use a scythe or a lawnmower rather than a tethered goat. The SPCA consistently opposes tethering, and an ex-inspector is quoted as saying, during my time as an SPCA inspector, I dealt with many incidences of goats being starved or found with their bowels hanging out after dog attacks or sustaining painful injuries from being hit by passing vehicles. All this suffering is just because people are too lazy to mow a strip of grass. Lastly, although I am mostly coming at this from an animal welfare perspective, I do wonder how continued goat tethering aligns with recent national and local initiatives to look at the potential of road verges in supporting native biodiversity. A recent New Zealand Transport Agency report says the road reserve is an asset in that it provides public lands for conservation that are highly visible to the public and can provide links between existing reserves. Effective integration of biodiversity conservation and road management can be achieved by increasing awareness of the biodiversity values of road reserves and providing specific guidelines for the management and protection of roadside biodiversity. A recent Wellington Council publication called Managing Your Bush Block also talks about the importance of ecological links across the landscape. Goat tethering to keep the grass down is an anachronistic practice anyway, and the increasing realisation in New Zealand that the marginal land typically grazed by tethered goats can be used to play a significant role in protecting and enhancing our native biodiversity makes it even more so. It's very likely that in the next few years, your council's biodiversity services team will be leading a paradigm shift in the district towards marginal corridor and link native planting, where once tethered goats grazed. And it might be a good idea to give a heads up on this now to avoid potential regulatory conflict in the future. Thank you again, kia ora.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you for that very thorough submission, and supported with the those other supporting people's comments. So I'm going to open it up for our team if there's any questions of Bridget.
Councillor Hadfield.
Councillor Hadfield. Can you unmute yourself, please?
There we go, technology. Sorry about that. More of an observation than a question, I guess, Your Worship. And thanks, Bridget, for the submission. When I read this, first thing I did was jump onto the SPCA website to have a bit of a look and see what their recommendations were around tethering. And I do note that the SPCA say that goats must not be tethered, which from their perspective is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. So, you know, personally, I've got a lot of sympathy for your submission, and I'm sure that we all place some degree of relevance to what the SPCA recommend. So, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments? No. Thank you. As I said, very thorough, and the points put very well. So thank you for your time to make this submission and joining us this morning, all the way from Auckland. So we appreciate that, and so we wish you well, and thank you for the time you've taken.
Thank you very much indeed, much appreciated.
Thank you. Right, our next submitter is also to do with stock movement, and we're on page 52. We're just waiting for Kayla to join us.
We are running roughly 11 minutes ahead of
Yes, we
time.
are ahead of time. So, and I see that there is a number of submissions in regards to tethering of animals on roads. And it's interesting, Councillor Hadfield, the SPCA view on this as well.
Yes, Your Worship, there's a nice little flurry of information from the SPCA on goats and the fact that they're social herd animals that shouldn't be kept alone, etc. You know, so personally, I think it's something that we need to be totally cognizant of. But again, that's only my opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Short. You had your hand.
I just wanted to add that it's not just goats that we see tethered in our district. Cattle and horses sometimes. In some parts of our districts, we have particularly wide verges where perhaps traffic isn't so likely an issue, but I certainly sympathise with the isolation of the animal on the side of the road.
Thank you. Does any others have any comments while we're waiting for Kayla to join us? Andrew, Councillor Quarry, I'll be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the days of tethered goats on the side of the road is over, and yeah, I share the views that the last presenter presented. I don't see any requirement for it now.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. Probably the days of tethering are probably finished. The difference, I guess, with goats is they're pretty difficult animals to contain. They jump very well, and I have experience of one jumping all over the top of my car at one stage and making quite a bit of damage. So, yeah, but I think, yeah, days of tethering are probably finished. Probably of all animals. I think cattle and horses, same thing.
Thank you. And I guess the and while I sympathise with those comments as well, the other thing is that don't assume that everyone's road verge is mowable. It's not. They're not flat.
We do have weed eaters, Your Worship. Mechanical ones, that is.
Yeah, true. I'd probably break my neck trying to weed eat our road verge.
That's adding to our carbon footprint, Councillor Hadfield.
Councillor Marsh, my weed eater is actually battery powered. So I'm very pleased to inform you that the 82% of renewable energy that we have in New Zealand weed eats most of my property.
Well done.
And 92% of the New Zealand population don't have as big a section as yours.
I'm unable to comment, Councillor Marsh.
Okay, how are we going? Still got 5 minutes. Councillor Belsky.
I'll just add my bit in there. Yeah, it's amazing how animals adjust and are quite happy where they are. There's a goat that's on the Colleton corner, Tānui Road, and it's very often just got its feet up having a sleep and it looks as happy chappy. But yeah, I can hear both sides of it. And I think we need to consider it seriously, of course, but there is the issues of roaming dogs, and I know they have been stolen. So those issues within itself probably justify doing something with these submitters. Thank you.
Thank you. What about from our fielding councillors who it isn't such an issue for you with your road verges? Councillor Casey? No?
Yeah, I was about to make a comment that maybe I should get 2 goats for outside Ranfurly Road, but just to keep each other company. But But in all seriousness, I need to take probably guidance from my esteemed rural colleagues and the reference to the SPCA for that. Sorry, as a townie, I simply don't own any goats or livestock, and it's a bit hard for me to personally gauge. But I understand people's sympathies towards animals or livestock tethered on the road. So, yeah. Over to you, rural folk. Lead us away.
Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wanting to check with Councillor Belsky whether he was referring to me as the goat on the corner of Colliston Road and Tarnary Road, and whether I should be offended or not. But thank you very much, Councillor Hadfield, for the offer to weed eat our sloping verges. Thank you very much.
Councillor G. Taylor.
Yeah, I think I think it's pretty loud and clear what the consensus is sort of coming from the public with the amount of submissions we had on the goat tethering topic. I mean, it is a little bit inhumane when you look at it from the perspective of we're sort of shutting down their ability to have freedom, and the way that we farm all our other animals is in a paddock, and they probably should be allowed with the same ability to roam and graze. But you do see them, they have their wee houses, so and water usually provided. So, but I do think that we should listen to our submitters, and there is quite a few on the goat tethering and against goat tethering. So I'd probably be in favour of prohibiting it in the future.
We could always put them in the bird aviaries.
Sorry, what was that, Councillor Quarry?
We could always put them in the bird aviaries.
Yeah, that's probably what you would need to contain them. I have a similar experience with goats. Admittedly, it was pet goat, who used to take every opportunity if the back door was left open, and he would find every table, the top of the piano, that would make a noise to dance on as he went through the house.
Yeah, that's our experience too. We had a pet, there was a pet goat that I was referring to before, and I should note we only ever had one pet goat.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we've got Kaylee as yet. And her submission also is supporting no tethering.
It's good to see, Your Worship, good to see recreational services back at work. I note outside our very small, large section, according to Councillor Marsh, and mowing the median down Kimbolton Road. But I did notice a very large lack of goats helping that process.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hadfield. Yes, rec services recommenced basically all their ground maintenance work the instant we moved to level 3, and they were actually gearing up for it during the tail end of the level 4 lockdown. The nice thing from a council perspective is our contract with rec services has basically very well defined levels of service, and so they're busy playing catch up. So you may well see them doing additional hours and having additional people to catch up to the level of service which they were unable to do during the lockdown. The one plus, of course, during the lockdown, as all of you will know, we had very little rain, so we actually had very little grass growth. So that was nice.
I note the roadside mowing has recommenced too, so that's good to see.
Yeah.
And I guess if we support our submitters with no tethering of goats, we may have to extend that level of service.
I'm not volunteering, Your Worship.
No, and they certainly wouldn't be able to do our roadside verge. Right, we're just checking to see if our next speaker is joining us.
We've got 1 minute. If Kayla doesn't turn up, we have Gary from PowerCo who is able to join us early.
Okay, that's a good idea.
So I think we might go to Gary.
Is he with us? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we will ask Gary from PowerCo if he can join us early. So.
Right, so we're aware that Gary from PowerCo is happy to join us earlier, so we're just inviting him to join us. His submission is on page 67. And changing topic this morning to our public places bylaw. Just while we're waiting for Gary to join us, just wondering from our team, our management team, can you just refresh our memory in regards to what's proposed with this bylaw? If there's any comments you're able to make.
My understanding is some of our changes to the public places bylaw essentially relate to UAVs or drones. So where people can and cannot fly drones. So we have two submissions, one from the Palmerston North Airport, which of course is very keen that there be no drones within as wide a radius of the airport as possible. And then we have the interesting submission from PowerCo, where they are investigating the use of drones to inspect power lines. And so they want the ability to be able to fly, overfly drones on their power lines. And the regulations also relate to the different ways drones can be operated. There's ones where you allow the operation of, but you have to keep the drone in sight at all times. And then there is allowance for drones to be basically more autonomous and fly out of sight. That is probably going to be increasingly relevant because various delivery companies are actually trialling drone delivery of packages. So in the future, it is possible that we could see drones basically taking parcels around and delivering them to private addresses. So we're trying to create a framework in which that can be done safely in our bylaw.
And I think also, if I may, Your Worship, is that part of that bylaw was referenced back to CAA parts 61 and 62. I can't remember actually, to be honest, but parts 61, 62, if I recall, which actually covers off the criteria on which people can actually fly UAVs. And interesting from Palmerston North, Dr. Templar, I'm not sure that much of the Palmerston North Airport controlled airspace actually falls within the Manawatu District Council, possibly a little bit over towards Newbury Line a little bit, but the boundary runs from Bunnythorpe, basically following the power lines through towards to Ashurst, and then down that sort of Newbury Line sort of way. So that's a bit interesting. But I think what obviously what we're looking at in the future will often be determined by civil aviation law, but also I guess what PowerCo is suggesting here actually makes, to my mind, quite a bit of sense. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Casey.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Probably just a comment, really. It's interesting to know that they're investigating the use of UOVs. And I'm sure Richard just pointed that out before, made comment. I'd just be quite curious to know, have they actually experimented with this in the Manawatu district area? And if not, or if they have, sorry, how often would they probably do this? And what sort of clash with our own bylaws would that affect? And also noting, probably building from what Councillor Hatfield has said, is that we actually have quite a busy airspace heading out towards Tānui, Palmas North, and across to Ohakia area. So, be interesting.
Thank you. I see that Gary's just joining us now. He's connecting up. And welcome, Frank. We see you. We have you online for your submission, so we'll get to you very shortly. Good morning, Gary. Are you able to?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for jumping in early. So we have your submission, your written submission on our page 67, which we have read. So we invite you to speak to that, and then there may be some questions from our team.
Fabulous. Well, morena, everybody. Thank you, Mayor Warboys, councillors and staff for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. Obviously, my name is Gary Schofield. I'm from Powerco, and I'm employed as an environmental planner. For those not familiar with Powerco, we're an electricity and gas distribution company, and we operate both networks within the Manawatu district. I guess most importantly for this submission relates to our electricity networks, particularly our above ground networks through the district. So we take our supply from Transpower at Bunnythorpe, and we transmit that through 33,000 volt sub-transmission cables through to Fielding, Sanson, as well as Kimbolton, where we have substations. At those substations, we reduce that voltage down for distribution throughout our networks and get that to every home and business in the district. As I mentioned, the majority of our networks are overhead, and a lot of those are located within the road corridor, and they're also located within some council parks as well as council-owned private property. And if I could just get you to turn to pages 72 to 74 within Annex A to today's agenda. There's just a few maps contained within there that I just wanted to provide a few examples to just sort of illustrate our networks. So on page number 72, I've provided an overview of Fielding, sort of the more urban portion of Fielding itself. And this is just illustrating our overhead networks. Now I've turned off the layers with our underground networks. So the blue lines are 33,000 volt lines, and they're coming in from Bunnythorpe and go to the Fielding substation, and then we head off to the west to the Sanson substation, and then off to the northeast out to Kimbolton. Now, if we just turn to the next page, page 73, this is just an example of some of our networks crossing over some council-owned private property. I think the street address is 269 and 399 Kawakawa Road. That blue line is council-owned private property, and I'm assuming that that'll be leased to a farming operation. Also on that plan, we've got the wastewater treatment plant with overhead networks supplying electricity for that treatment plant. The final example is on page 74, which is Johnston Park, and we've got some overhead networks coming through the southern end of the park. There's a 33,000 volt line as well as an 11 kV line as well. There's some other low voltage overhead assets through that as well. Now I'm assuming that that park will be leased to looks like bowling greens there, perhaps a cycling club and others. So just providing a few examples of our assets where they are either in road, private property, or in parks. In terms of we've obviously submitted on the public places bylaw, as it would prohibit the use of unmanned aerial vehicles being able to be operated by PowerCo in those spaces. At the moment, we are currently investigating the use of UAVs for activities on our network. So we can use that for asset condition monitoring, for fault identification, and fundamentally it's just a way of speeding up our investigations when we're out doing work on our network. At the moment, I guess we would currently go out and undertake inspections from the ground where possible. It might involve a ladder being put up against beside a pole, may involve a HIAB truck, or in certain circumstances there might be a helicopter utilised predominantly through rural areas and generally on private property, not over road situations. So that's how we're currently doing it, and obviously that would be a need, particularly where you're using trucks for a lot of temporary traffic management around those staff to keep them safe and to keep people away from our work site. I guess one of the other considerations for us is from a health and safety perspective, where we've obviously putting our staff or contractors close to live equipment raises potential issues there. So being able to keep our staff away from that live equipment is definitely beneficial from a health and safety perspective. So I guess fundamentally, in terms of our submission, we're seeking an exemption to Schedule 1 so that we're able to undertake inspections of our network utilising UAVs. I would add that there's still a process for PowerCo or our contractors to go through before we can physically access the road corridor. And likewise, I guess for parks or other privately owned property, would be happy for a process to be in place where we come and have that discussion with council before we do those inspections using those UAVs, but we just ideally want the potential to be able to use the UAVs in the future. It's an evolving space for us, and given the blanket prohibition and the bylaw as it's currently drafted, we just want to ensure there is an avenue for us to get an approval if it turns out that they are beneficial for us and we can utilise those on a network-wide basis. So yeah, that's fundamentally what I wanted to speak to. My submission was fairly brief. Obviously, more than happy to answer any questions. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you very much. Very thorough. So I'll open it up to our team for any questions.
Councillor Hadfield.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, for joining in and using technology in this great day and age.
Yep.
Look, you touched on a couple of things in terms of aerial inspection anyhow, and I'm presuming that you would use rotary wing and fixed wing aircraft at times for overhead inspection regardless. Would that be correct?
Typically, it would be helicopter would be the main one, because we need to be able to hover typically over top of an asset to either use cameras to really zone in and get good photographs of the equipment on the poles. So as opposed to fixed wing aircraft, they would typically move too quickly along.
So on that basis, there'd be no reason using rotary wing aircraft that so long as you were obeying civil aviation law, which is whatever it is, all of these areas that you were mentioning, you could legally fly over with a helicopter.
Obviously subject to CAA rules. I don't know what the rules are in terms of the urban environment.
1,000 feet above ground level for urban and 500 feet above ground level for rural.
Yep. So obviously we would use a professional helicopter company to undertake those surveys for us. Would have our team on board with whatever equipment we need, but they would be responsible for the obeying with the CAA rules. And obviously with the current process we're going through at the moment, where we're investigating the use of UAVs, obviously complying with the CAA requirements is a fundamental part of that investigation for us.
I guess the point I'm making here is that potentially we could potentially prohibit flying a UAV over an area where you could legally fly a helicopter.
That sounds like it. Yep.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. That's a good point. Any further questions, Gary? No? Okay, thank you. Yes, very thorough. And thank you for taking the time to join us today and speak to your submission. And through the process, we'll come back to you. So thanks for your time today and take care.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Right, okay, so we'll move back to welcome, Frank. Good to see you joining us this morning. Frank is a familiar face to council submission process over the years. Frank's submission is on page 53. And we have read your submission, Frank, but you're very welcome to speak to it and then also be available for any questions.
Right, thank you, Helen. Graham Tehan, who, as you know, is a lessee, or was a lessee of Mount Lees, he actually encouraged Te Aroha Trail walkers to stay there. So I think that's when we understand it was not quite the case in some of the others in the council report there. There's never been any problems with the Te Aroha Trail walkers there at all. They enjoy the part that is in the country, and the last place where they would have stayed going south, or coming from north, I mean, would be at Koriata, which is 42 kilometres away. So it's quite a nice spot to be off the road, because unfortunately at present, a lot of the trail in the Manawatu is on road, especially from the Bulls Bridge to Palmerston North. So they like the rural setting, the accommodation, there was no problems. They don't have vehicles, so there's no problems if they were putting vehicles on the lawn. They only stayed a very short time, probably only one night. One of the attractions, I don't know whether they actually used it, was the fact there's a walk at Mount Lees Reserve. If they didn't stop at Mount Lees Reserve, the next stop would be Fielding, which makes it a pretty long day going south. And then they go to Palmerston North and fill up there and then carry on. Graham's had a lot of positive feedback from walkers over the years, and he's brought this up at the meeting. They like the place, and we get an idea of how many numbers come through over the whole trail. So it was quite good them stopping there. The trust would be very, very disappointed if they weren't allowed to stay there, especially where we're trying to get the trail off road, and at least there's a place where they can camp. I think that's all. Is there any questions?
Thanks, Frank. We'll open it up to the team. Any questions?
Councillor Humphrey.
Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Frank. A really helpful submission with lots of really valuable information. I wanted to ask you a question. You noted in the report, and you just touched on, the distance that people are travelling and the benefit of Mount Lees. You also talked about, people often then travelling, followed by an easy walk to Fielding to rest, resupply and buy lunch, or to stop for the night. We've received some other submissions questioning or talking about the availability of freedom camping at Kōwhai Park within Fielding, and I was just interested as to whether you had any perspectives on whether that space should also be made available or not.
What, substituting Kōwhai Park for Mount Lees Reserve?
Not necessarily substituting, it could be a both and. It was just an additional question whether that was also a space that you think would be valuable for walkers on the trail to be able to
No, it's still a long way from the last campsite. That's the problem. That's 42 Ks, so it makes another 8. We're talking about 50 Ks for one day. I suppose there could be some who might like that, but they would not have stopped at the Coriata one. I don't know how they would have gone on. It is a problem, this area, because there's so much roading. It's not a, as you know, we're trying to get it off road. We have been over the years. Mount Lee seems to be the ideal spot, unfortunately, or fortunately. Yes.
Thank you. I think, Frank, what Councillor Humphrey was suggesting, she was merely asking your thoughts, not about taking away Mount Lee's reserve as an option, but whether you thought there was also an opportunity as well at Kowhai Park and Fielding.
We'd be quite happy to put it on our website that it is an option.
Thank you.
No problem at all. We've got like 2 B&Bs in Palmerston North, which are on the website. And of course, Mount Lee's is on the website. So we'd be quite happy to put it on if it was available. Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Campbell?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Frank. Yeah, I know your concern. My understanding is there'd been freedom camping happening at Mount Lee's for some time, as you mentioned. Perhaps it was more a question for our staff, because looking at the draft bylaw, is this a change, or was Mount Lee's already a restricted freedom camping area? But the way I read it, I can't see I haven't got the previous draft in front of me, but I can't see this being amended. It's being left as it was. Is that correct?
Your Worship, I can, and Councillor Campbell, I could answer that just briefly if you would like me to, Catherine here. You're absolutely correct. There is no change. So this was a private arrangement. And the only reason it is up in the air at the moment, as I understand it, is the lease is currently is under review. And until it is that review process is finalised, the acceptability of campers staying at Mount Lee's we can't determine whether that will be acceptable or not to the new leasee. So that's just the situation we're in. But in a short answer to your question, no, it is not a change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Short.
Yes, thank you, Frank, for your submission. I just wondered how many people walking the trail would uptake paid accommodation or free accommodation compared to those who perhaps might put up a small tent?
Well, Graham estimated that there would be between 600 and 1,000 people in the last season who had walked southbound. It's very, very hard to get the accurate figures, but he was able to talk to most of them. And another person in Palmerston North will also talk to them. So between the two of them, we were able to get a pretty good idea how many were walking the trail. So there's about 600, and most of them would be overseas people.
Oh, okay. So I guess my question was, do many people bring their own little tent and stay in a tent?
Yes, because yes, they do. Yes.
Thank you.
We have got huts up, of course, in the Tararuas. Both the council and Tiaroa have got 2 huts there between Palmerston North and Levin, with Shannon, I mean. Yes.
Thank you. Any further questions for Frank? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for your submission, Frank, and your interest in this, and for making time to talk to us today. We appreciate that. And we will come back to you once we've completed this process of the bylaw review. So thank you and stay safe.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our submitters for today. It looks like Kayla's not going to join us. So we'll move on with our agenda. We've done our Lagoima requests, so we're moving on to item 12, consideration of late items, and there are none. So, which leads us to move into our public excluded business. And to do that, we need a mover and a seconder, please, for the resolution on our agenda. So do I have a mover and a seconder, please? So I'll move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of minutes. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Marsh, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye or raise your hands. Thank you. Against, that motion is carried. So thank you to our viewers. We are moving into our public excluded session for our agenda. Thank you for joining us today.